this was odd. The Saints played the Jaguars to a 17-all tie on Sunday in the Dome, and a few hours after that game, the Saints shipped Khalen Saunders to Jacksonville. It was first reported by Tom Pelissero, and I guess it was odd because Khalen Saunders played darn near the entire game. He was tied for the lowest rated player on the entire Saints team by PFF with a 29.9 overall grade, according to Pro Football Focus. But I look at this trade, and it makes so much sense. And I know Khalen Saunders kind of has become a fan favorite for a couple of reasons. He had the fat guy interception last year against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City on Monday Night Football, which was really cool. And then also my wife knows who Khalen Saunders is because Khalen Saunders' brother was one of the backup dancers on the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. If you've watched the Eras Tour, the We Are Never Getting Back Together song, the guy who would speak into the mic and be like ever, that was Khalen Saunders' brother. So Swifties loved Khalen Saunders. Brought a whole new component of fans to Saints football. Did you know that, Muse? Did you know that?
I did know that, actually, yes. I didn't know he was the guy speaking into the microphone, but I did know he was one of her dancers, yes.
See? Learn something new when you come here, Muse. It's what you missed when you were out all last week.
It's true, yeah. I didn't know any of that last week.
Did you know Taylor Swift released a new album?
I did.
It'd be impossible to
Yeah, I was about to, that's kind of just in everybody's face, yeah.
Yeah. So Khalen Saunders going to Jacksonville, but I love this trade. So for Jacksonville, they have Arik Armstead and former Tiger Maason Smith on their defensive line, but both are injured. Maason Smith suffered what's described as a lower body injury when he was doing the pre-camp conditioning test. Bummer for Maason Smith. So they need help on the defensive line. And now they get a guy in Khalen Saunders who's entering his 7th season. He played in Kansas City for the first 4, won a Super Bowl in KC, came to New Orleans where he's been the past couple of years. And he was a 3rd-round pick back in 2019. But when you look at the change defensively that the New Orleans Saints are making, Khalen Saunders, who's 6 foot 324, he's basically as tall as he is wide. He doesn't fit what Brandon Staley wants in this 3-4 defense that they're switching to. When you look at the defensive linemen for the Saints, Christian Boyd, 6'2", 320. Brian Brzee, 6'5", 305. Vernon Broughton, who they just drafted this year out of Texas, 6'5", 311. Devon Gotcha, they just brought in, 6'3", 330. Jaden Peavy, who they just signed last week, 6'5", 308. John Ridgway, 6'5", 321. Nathan Shepard, 6'4", 315. You get the point? Khalen Saunders is 6 foot tall. He don't fit what they're trying to do defensively. And it's evidenced by the fact that he played damn near the entire game against Jacksonville when all the starters were out. Brzee didn't play, Shepard didn't play, Gotcha didn't play, and there's Khalen Saunders out there playing the whole game. So the writing's on the wall for Khalen Saunders. I think it was going to be a real challenge for him to make this roster. I know that sounds odd, but when you look at Gotcha, Brzee, Broughton, Shepard, Boyd, it was going to be hard for him to make this roster. So you have an opportunity to trade him and get something for him. Awesome. So what they got in return is Luke Fortner. Now, Luke Fortner was drafted by Jacksonville in the 3rd round back in 2022. He played in every snap as a rookie, started every game in 2023, but after 2023, going into last year, he really started to struggle and he lost his job. This, by the way, was Doug Peterson, the former Jacksonville head coach, what he had to say on Fortner when they drafted him back in 2022.
There's a lot to like about Luke. One, when you meet this kid, he's wired the right way. We do like him at center, but he has the position flex to move to guard as well, which again, the position versatility is really good. And gives us the depth at the position. It gives great competition there. He's a guy that when you watch him on film, he can do everything that we do in our offense in the run game. Whether he's reaching a 3 technique or climbing to the 2nd level, he's got the ability to do that. He can redirect, and just a really good fit for our offensive line in that room.
Okay, so that was what Doug Peterson said just a little more than three. I mean, it was the draft in 2022. It's 3.5 years ago that he said those words. And the position flexibility, I think, is the key. Remember, this wouldn't have been necessary had Will Clapp not been injured. You brought in Will Clapp, and we all love Will, New Orleans guy, brother Martin, LSU, drafted by the Saints, the whole deal. But Will Clapp also played under Kellen Moore for 2 years in L.A. with the Chargers. You know, when Will signed with the Saints, he came on this show and we talked about it. He talked about loving playing for Kellen Moore when they were together in L.A. And so that made a lot of sense. And the position flexibility that Clapp brought you as a veteran who could play center or guard made him a very valuable interior piece. And it sucks that Will got hurt, and I hate that, man. His season's over. He's on IR. And it's just, that's a miserable thing. Of course, I would have loved it to see Will Clapp be healthy and be that guy on this team. But when you look at what's transpired now after Clapp's injury, you went into free agency to try to add a body there on the offensive line, and they added an offensive lineman from the UFL, Mike. I always say it wrong. Mike Panasiuk, who, by the way, was, according to Pro Football Focus from Sunday, one of the lowest graded players. I think he was the second lowest rated offensive player. Barry Wesley was the lowest. Mike Panasiuk was the next lowest at 38.8. And so I don't know that you're counting necessarily on him. And then Torricelli Simpkins, who's the undrafted free agent out of South Carolina, never played center. And now, I mean, he came in for Clapp against LA last week, and he started the game against Jacksonville on Sunday. But now you're talking about a guy that was a third-round pick in Luke Fortner. That was a third-round pick, has been a starting center in the NFL. He's only allowed 4 sacks in 3 years in the NFL. He played every snap as a rookie, started every game as a second-year player, and then lost his job. So I'm not telling you he's challenging Eric McCoy. McCoy's, I think, your best offensive lineman right now. I mean, he's one of the best centers in the NFL. But last year in week 2 against the Eagles, McCoy suffers a groin injury, and you had to shuffle your offensive line. Well, in this situation now, last year was Lucas Patrick. Now you got a young guy who's still in his mid-20s, who's played a good bit of football over 3 years, who can play center or guard, and gives you depth at that position where currently you don't have a great option. And you got him by trading a guy that probably wasn't going to make your team anyway. So I like it. I mean, hat tip. I think this is just about right for New Orleans. By the way, Simpkins looked at his PFF grades against the Chargers. He had a 63. Against Jacksonville, he graded a 52. His pass block grade against Jacksonville was a 37. So I don't think Torricelli Simpkins is pushing to make the roster. And now you get a guy that's a young veteran that can back up Eric McCoy, and I like it. So not necessarily a trade that's going to define or change the New Orleans Saints season, but it's a position of need, especially given the MASH unit that was the offensive line a year ago and how much rotation you saw and how poorly they're currently playing in the preseason. You had a guy with young veteran to add some depth there. It's a good trade for the New Orleans Saints. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.